Hello, and welcome to Confidently Wrong, a show by regular dudes talking with confidence about content we have no right to speak about with any kind of authority, but do it anyway. I'm Wesley Nakamura, and as always, I'm joined by award-winning director Brian Redondo and Savon Jones, aka Captain Bonnie. This is episode 109, and we previewed the new Netflix sensation, Beef. I'm confident that it's going to be the best show you've ever listened to, and well, hey, if it's not, you can always ask us for a refund.
Incredible!
Hello! It is one of those beautiful days. Here we are, confidently wrong.
In the neighborhood.
In the neighborhood. You have, me, the lovely Savon Jones. We have award-winning director Brian Redondo.
What up?
Neighborhood hero, altruist, champion of the kids and community, the test
Pillar
prep
of the
pop-off
community.
professor, Wesley Nakamura.
Man
How
of
you
the
doing?
people.
Hey, so
People's champ.
these guys were
Welcome back.
recording an episode without me, so you'll hear that one before this one. And I had tutoring from 9 to noon, so I set this up for kids. Decent turnout, like
Good
12
man.
kids came.
Oh, that's what you were doing this
Yeah,
morning?
it was
Yeah.
tutoring.
I thought you had a kid's birthday party or something.
No. So at 11:30, I tell the kids, okay, text your parents, tell them to pick you up. Because you know how it goes. Savon, you know how this goes. Like,
Come
there's
on,
always
bro.
a few kids who are stragglers, and like, as a teacher, you're supposed to stay with them. I know they're
You
like,
can't just leave them.
You're not supposed to. I mean, I think you probably could at a certain point. So I'm sitting there.
There's high
Most of the
school,
kids
right?
go home. Yeah, the
Yeah.
third to last kid goes at 12:25. Okay, fine, right? But then there's 2 kids, and we're sitting there. The second to last kid, 12:40. His parents roll up, pick him up. The last kid didn't get picked up until 12:50. 50 minutes after we were supposed to go. I didn't eat lunch. I'm a little bit hangry. All because of
Get this man a Snickers.
I stayed till the end of this waited. So instead of being there for 3 hours, I also didn't plan ahead. So I kind of had to do some planning ahead. So I was there for 5 hours at work today on a Saturday. So that was my bad, but also like, come on, kids, just get your family here. Like, you called them ahead of time. And the
But
mom.
aren't these grown kids? Like,
They're like
I mean, we're talking
17,
about them like they're
16, yeah.
children.
Yeah.
Oh my God, 16, 17.
They can't drive themselves necessarily.
Do they need to really? You need to wait with them, hold their hand for their
It's
mommy
just-
or
it's
daddy.
just
That's
a
what everybody.
liability.
That's what everybody
Yes.
say until something happened,
I
and then
know.
everybody becomes Captain
Oh, and then
Hindsight.
finger point.
Everyone's Captain Hindsight, and suddenly everyone who wasn't there has a golden, perfect plan of what they would have done. Like, all right,
Right.
cool. Well, you weren't there, so what are we doing here?
That would make a lovely entry into the MCU. Captain Hindsight. He'll just come around and be like,
That was a South Park bit.
Tony Stark, what were you thinking? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So here's
that
a
was
life
South
pro
Park
tip.
It's already done.
No, that was the
I
bit. It
gotta-
was a South Park bit. It was about Katrina, but it was an episode that was an analogy about Katrina saying, the backup pumps were destroyed. Well, they should have had a backup to the backup points, and just like, oh, okay, well, it's real. Oh, wow, you got this all figured out, Captain Hindsight. Everything's good.
All right,
with
so
you.
this is a life pro tip. If you're a parent and you go to drop your kid off at school or wherever, even if it's at a parent's, a friend's house or whatever, pick them up at the time that it's supposed to be picked up. Like, don't be that person that holds up the other party or the adult that is supervising from getting on their very important podcast here and doesn't get lunch now. So, just you got to think of other people, and they come and pick them up. No wave. No like, hey, I'm sorry I'm late. None of that. No, just picked them up.
No acknowledgement.
No, none of that. So, that was it left a little, a bad taste in my mouth. But overall, it was
little
actually, it was
salty?
really good. A little
Do
salty.
you have
We'll get
beef?
into that.
Did you take down that license
Are
plate?
you hungry?
My son
Are you
really
hungry?
281-589 281-332 ABF. Got you.
Did you flip the bird?
I did not flip the bird. No,
Sling pigeons?
It was fine. Overall, the experience was great. This was our first try at it. Next week will be better. If it happens again, that kid is no longer allowed to come to Saturday school.
Got him.
That's all
Oh,
it
man,
will be.
Wes, that kid will be banned from Saturday school.
Oh, heck yeah. No,
man,
I'm not staying for 50
couldn't
minutes more
I
than
couldn't
twice.
I couldn't imagine getting
Banned.
banned from Saturday school, bro. That is one of the
optional.
worst. What
Optional.
what
Volunteer.
Oh, this was optional Saturday
Optional
school?
Saturday school. Yeah,
It wasn't
he's
like
going to get banned
detention Saturday school.
if he gets another
Man,
one.
what a punishment. You are
All right.
you are something.
All right, let's get into it. We're
speaking of punishment,
beef, where you want to make your enemies pay. That's what this show is all about. It's on Netflix. Brian, do you want to give us the premise for people who haven't heard of it and don't know what it's about, and whether it's a comedy or a drama or what the heck is a movie? Who knows?
A little bit of everything, man.
Tell us what it is.
I mean, that's what you get with beef, like real life beef, just what it is. But okay, so I think this is currently the #1 show on Netflix, and kind of came out a little bit out of nowhere. I mean, there was a trailer that came out a few weeks ago when I found out about it.
I was looking forward to it, yeah.
And then it's kind of I feel like it's had a little bit of a groundswell, if I could say that. I don't know.
It showed up on my social media
That's what my
feed.
pulsometer is telling me. But anyway, so beef, we got it's a two-hander. It's Steve Yeun and Ali Wong. Steve Yeun of Walking Dead fame, Glenn, famously beheaded in Walking Dead,
and Invincible.
And Ali Wong, who people know from her stand-up comedy. You know, she's like pregnant in her stand-up special, really made a name for herself that way. And now, with their powers combined, are clashing here together on this 10 episode series called Beef, which is basically about their two characters who have a run-in in a parking lot. Essentially, one's about to back up into the other one. There's some horn honkings, there's some bird flipping, and things just go wild from that point on. You know, these two characters are so angry and kind of like morally depraved that they start going after each other because of this altercation in the parking lot, and it just escalates from there.
It goes beyond the car chase. Like they're following
way
up
beyond
with each
the car
other.
chase.
Yeah, I mean,
you know, they trying to figure out who is that MFer in the white SUV. Who's this dude in the pickup truck? I'm gonna find out who this person is and now make their life a living hell because I don't appreciate how they disrespected me in that moment. And so the show really just escalates from that initial altercation into a series of, you know, basically what becomes like a blood feud, essentially. And we see that play out over the course of 10 episodes. And honestly, I feel like that's kind of all you need to know about the show. And kind of like what Wes was saying, is it a tragedy? Is it a comedy? It's a little bit of both. It can feel a little surreal and absurd at times, but still grounded in some very real characters who are, as I said, like if people who take a beef too seriously, you know what type of people these are already. And so we get to watch that unfold.
This show, as we know, is all about letting just the salt be all consuming. It just takes over your entire being. And we get to see some of the antecedents, what leads them to be in this state of mind and state of being, and the kind of disaster that unfolds afterwards. What have you thought? We're only going to talk about the first 3 episodes. I think Brian's been a little bit further, but me and Savon have gotten there. And we just want to do a preview for folks. So these first few episodes, what did you think? What did you like? Savon, start us off.
I like a lot about this show. I've always been a fan of just the concept. We talked about it on the book episode, salt. Salt's a real thing. People get salty. Watching people have the salt consume them is a very real thing. I've watched many good people sabotage themselves because they couldn't handle the salt. And so for a show to be entirely...
high cholesterol.
And for a show to just be entirely about this concept is just so primal and simple. And I am genuinely just... I guess the show just feels very refreshing. That's what I'm really enjoying. I haven't really watched anything ever that feels like it could fit into this mold of show because it's about this innocuous beef between the folks, right? But really, it's more about their lives and how they kind of choose to sabotage themselves because of this beef, which is making me watch the show in a really unique way. But I think what I'm loving most is specifically as complicated as everyone's lives are in this show, as you learn about what's going on, their motives, their relationships, they still absolutely have things that are and can be going well in their lives. And I think the show does a good job, at least where I'm at, of establishing that. And so it makes it even fun to watch them throw it all away because, hey, you just decided you just couldn't let this go. And you couldn't move on, or you couldn't keep it rolling. And that's the show. So to me, we talk about genre. The show is a train wreck in the best way, in that it's awful. It sucks for everybody involved. It's tragic, but if I see it happening in front of me, I'm gonna watch. I'm not gonna look away.
He's there for it.
So it's
Brian, what have you
it's
done?
good.
with
World
the show?
star. So I have watched all 10 episodes so far.
Ooh-wee.
I couldn't keep my
Whoa.
eyes off of this thing.
You couldn't stop.
I'm a huge rubbernecker, so I'm just like, what's going down? And as as Savon says, I completely agree with all those points, right? Like this feels very refreshing in that, it's a legit character study. And it's, usually in these types of things, it's, there's one protagonist and we're on their journey, right? Like Breaking Bad is the Walter White show, even though you have Jesse in it. Like it's still really Walter White's show. But this feels a little different, right? Because you're getting Steve Yeun's perspective, you're getting Ali Wong's perspective, and they are both carrying this tete-a-tete, right? It's almost as if, Walter White and Gustavo Fring really had much more equal footing in their show, and I think that is such a perfect dynamic for making something you want to watch, right? Like, where's the conflict? It's clear where the conflict is. These people hate each other and they want to make each other's lives miserable. And what could be as delicious as something as that? But that's just surface level, right? Then you have the character study aspect of it, getting into the who's, what's, where, when's, and why's of all of that. And the world that, creates those conditions for them to be like this. I think all of that is so fascinating. And, it's hard to compare this to anything else that's out there at the moment. And they do that not just story-wise, character-wise, but also how the show is made, right? Like it just has a vibe to it. It's funny, it's offbeat, it's twisted,
It feels like real life.
Yeah, it feels like real life. It doesn't have another touchstone because it's unique to itself, which is how life should be.
Well said.
What about you, Wes? Where you
I
at?
like that.
I mean, first of all, I gotta say it's just like deeply awkward. There's so many things where you're just like, what are you like? Is that really the move? Like, you're just making it harder for yourself. And then like, do we need to do that? Like, and then these people are so like in their own heads, and there's a moment where one of the characters like is basically like making love to a handgun, like a pistol. And you're just like, what am I watching? Like, is this comedic? Am I laughing? Am I just sad for this person? Like, where are we going with this?
How are you supposed to feel right now?
Yeah, come on, Wes. Like you never
no help on that.
self-satisfied with a weapon.
And like I think if this were, I'm going to talk about. I wanted to talk about this later, but I could talk about it now. Is like this feels like it could be a Judd Apatow movie or like a who's the lady that's always funny? She was in Bridesmaid and she was in like Mike and Molly and Gilmore Girls.
The Saturday Night Live person?
No, she's like a little bit heavier set. She has the husband who also does the comedies with her.
Oh, yeah.
What's her name?
Melissa McCarthy?
Total brain fart.
Yes.
Melissa McCarthy?
This feels very much like it could be like a Melissa McCarthy movie where she just gets into this like crazy, rivalry with somebody else, and it would end up sort of being a little bit more like punched up to be a little bit more absurd and more funny. I mean, this is already absurd, but they play the absurdity more as
it's
like
not
also
slapstick.
Yeah, this is more like invasive, right? The way that they sort of do all of this stuff, and you sort of get all of these different layers of societal pressures, of human actual concerns. There's some real world consequences that could end up happening for these folks, right? And there's just sort of like all these different layers. There's family dynamics, there's interpersonal dynamics, there's husband and wife, brothers, there's sort of all this thing going on. Kids and their parents, kids in their parents-in-law, like a mother-in-law and a daughter-in-law, have some interesting, like, weird vibes going on, right? And it's another mini rivalry that they're sort of facing. So I don't know how I feel about this. I think that's going to be the main theme of me through this whole show is, like, I don't know how I feel about this show. Like, I like it and I'm watching it.
Does it make you feel gross?
I don't know that it makes me feel gross
guilty,
as much
Wes?
as I feel like, why are you also, like, doing these things? Like, can't you just take a breath and, like, not do these things? And they can't. Like, these characters cannot help
The show makes
themselves.
it very clear why they do those things.
But
that's probably the best thing
also
in the film.
have
Like, oh, you know
other
exactly
choices.
why.
We have all these other choices, and they could make them, and they don't, and they consistently don't. And I mean, yeah, it's believable that why they don't, but like, at any moment they could just, like, extricate themselves. And
You never just
and
been
move
so
on.
mad you just did some dumb
they
shit? You never just been mad? I
Of
can
course,
count many.
but do I continue to do the dumb things over and over and over again, and then escalate them into not just dumb but, like, dangerous things? Like, I don't, not me personally, and I understand that, like, the show is about that, and so there's all
Wes,
of this going through my
Are
head.
you mad?
This show is
Mad
weird.
that Asian people are not being model minorities here. Is that what's going on?
Oh no!
Getting ripped.
Am I
Is that what
gonna
it
have
is about?
my AA card revoked here?
I don't know.
My APIA card. I got to turn it in now. All right. So we have a pretty well-known cast, at least for the main characters, right? Steve Yeun and Ellie Wong are quite well-known, at least in today's modern world. Have you been enjoying anybody in the cast in particular? Is it one of those two? What's sort of been floating your boat? Brian, start us off.
Well, I mean, Oscar-nominated Steve Yeun is the clear heavy hitter and champion.
He's so good.
Of this show. Like, that guy is just magnetic. Like, you cannot look away from him. And what I love about this role for him specifically is that he's kind of cast against type. He's playing, a down and out working class guy who, as you have said, is, feeding his worst impulses. But yet at the very same time, you can't help but feel sympathetic towards him. You can't help but feel that he is also funny and his comedic timing is perfect. But any humorous thing that happens to him, he's also still has something underneath that feels heartfelt and sad, but he's also depraved and he's full of anger and rage and he's seething. But yet you want to hug this guy. Like, man, like Steve Yeun is such a treasure and perfect role for him. And what I love also is that he's got this angry Asian man thing going on where, he feels like he deserves more than he's getting, and that people are not giving him a fair shake, and how that plays out with his other family members. He's got this thing going on with his brother, which is, there's jealousy and there's rage, but there's real love, and something similar with an older cousin, played hilariously by David Cho, who feels very much like some dudes that I know, right? Like,
he
he's
feels
like,
real.
He's that cousin in your family that you don't want to mess with, but like you kind of have to, but you also respect
He's
him.
family still.
Yeah,
But it's just
like, oh, dude, like you were messed up, but yeah,
that's
there's
family,
also
but keep
my
a
homie.
degree of separation too.
Yeah. So a lot of things here, but they're all in the orbit of Steve Yeun's greatness, and in some regards, like you're almost feeling like, oh man, you might be almost taking up too much space in this movie or in this TV series because he's that good. He's that good in this, and like so glad that they made this role for him, and it feels very specific to him too, right? It's like this, a lot of these plot points revolve around his Korean American life, his parents being motel owners, and then he goes to the Korean church and plays like in the Korean church basketball league and, does the praise and worship music. Yeah. So all feels very specific towards something that he's able to bring to the table.
Sav, who you been drinking in with your eyes?
That's a statement. I mean, a lot of the Steven Yeun stuff, Brian, you kind of hit it on the head already. But and again, I'm only 3 episodes in, but when I started watching the second and third episode in particular, Ali Wong for me has really been standing out more and more as we learn more about her character. I think she's a bit harder to sympathize with initially because you do see that she's rich and very well off and all that. And then once I've and again, there's even more, I'm sure, because I'm only a drop of the way in, but Ali Wong does this amazing job of she plays the emotionally repressed role of someone trying to keep it together extremely well. There's a scene when she's at the couples therapy, right? And it was really awesome to see her say all of the right things when she was there, of saying, I want to change, self-awareness. And she was saying all of that. But you could see that she was just kind of going through the motions and just saying what it feels like you're supposed to say. And she still isn't really expressing herself. And then just watching the marriage counselor and the husband, is it George? George just kind of be like, that's awesome. The self-awareness is great. And it's like, okay, yeah, all that's true. Like, that's just such amazing acting to be able to have those layers of someone who is extremely intelligent and self-aware, but that doesn't, you hyper analyzing your emotions doesn't excuse you from them. And, I don't think a lot of shows really break down, like, you can be really intelligent and aware of exactly what's wrong, and that doesn't have shit to do with what the actual solution is. And seeing her face when she's like, yeah, I said all the right stuff. We should be good, right? And it's like, all right, cool. That's just the start. We got to dig deep into the why. And she's just like, hey, yo, what? And
no, I thought she was like, yes, you're right. We do need to dig into this.
Yeah,
right?
but
she
yeah,
knew
but
even
yeah,
to say that
but it
stuff.
felt fake. But yeah, but if it was
of
all
course
like
it was fake, yeah.
Yeah, but like I could see in like her face, it's like I felt the acting. This is where I praise her performance, right? And also we have context of what's actually going on. Yeah. Also, we have context of what her actual truth and inner monologue and what's actually going on with her is too. So we can read the microaggressions of like, or the micro expressions of, she's clearly just going through the motions saying what's supposed to say, because we know based on what she's been through, that's not what she's actually doing. And yeah, I don't know. I don't think you see a lot of characters get played that way. A lot of who are self-aware, but still, it's like, okay, just because you're smart don't mean you have the answers to what your actual emotional problems are. And intelligence doesn't fix emotional distress and what she has experienced as a character. But Ali Wong plays it really, really well.
I feel like I just went to therapy now.
Yo, it's real time. Look. Yeah, I don't know. I feel increasingly sympathetic for her as I watch it, and that I think takes good writing because, to your point, I think Steve Yeun's character is, for me, it's going almost the opposite direction, where he feels more initially sympathetic, and now I feel like they're trending in opposite directions because you see him as more downtrodden, down and out. Like, doesn't he attempt to like take his own life at one point? Like, he's clearly in the dumps.
Oh yeah.
But then when you kind of take a step back of why their lives are the way they are, you kind of, at least for me, I sympathize more with Ali. What's Ali Wong's character name? I want to say the character's name, not the actor.
I think it's Amy.
Amy. I sympathize more with Amy at that point because she's not perfect, but she's not, at least in my opinion, I don't know. It doesn't feel like she's malicious in the same way that sometimes I've seen his character be. But then again, sometimes it's about money. I don't know. It's a fun dynamic comparing them to. It feels it's really fun to watch.
Yeah, she's got money.
But yeah, Ali Wong's
That's helpful.
But Ali Wong's been,
even though she's worried about
great.
it, her character's got money, right? So that puts just a little bit less of the like immediate pressure on.
Yeah,
on
but her whole
that-
thing is that she didn't have money, right? Isn't their
Right.
whole thing also like she
Yeah.
didn't have money, so she
Yeah.
earned it? So it is like a
for sure.
and
But not
it's a
having
fun-
money before is not the same as not having money now, right?
Yeah,
So that's why
and
their
then that's what-
situations are less
Yeah,
drastic.
she's in a position of
Yeah,
power.
and then that's what it gets juicy
relatively.
though, because your boy also is part of the reason, like him and their brother's dynamic, right? Like that's why it's so fun, because some of his bad situation is his own fault. Like, hey, bro,
Oh,
this
yeah.
happened explicitly because of what you did, and so it's, there's obviously no, I don't think either's better or worse or right or wrong, but man, I keep swinging back and forth wildly between. They're both in the wrong, but my sympathies just all over the place. It's just really compelling writing.
Yeah, no sympathy for any of them. That's what I was gonna get into. Is that
What?
who have I been enjoying?
No
None
sympathy?
of them. These are bad actors. Not like stage performers, but they are just bad actors in the movie in terms of like they're doing the wrong things, man.
How confusing.
Both the main characters are certainly got reasons for how they're acting and why it's continuing to hit their insecurities over and over again, and they're that pushback against whatever is going on in their lives, and that's what makes this like kind of juicy to dig into. And man, I'm not enjoying watching any of these characters just like self-sabotage and self-immolate themselves, and everything around them.
But isn't it interesting? Come
It
on,
is.
man.
It is interesting. Yeah, and I want to keep watching.
I don't think they're bad. Like, I don't
just
think
hate
they're
them?
bad people. Like they're flawed and damaged
Oh, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, for
traumatized
sure.
people. I don't think
they're not like
bad
evil.
people.
They're not like trying to
They're
take
not
over
Lex
the world.
Luthor kicking a kitten.
No.
Like, damn, bro.
No.
But you got zero sympathy for them?
You
No,
got
I
no
do. I have
sympathy?
sympathy, but I'm not like
You just said you
enjoying to watch
didn't.
all these like mistakes.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
they continue to make them, and then you just have less sympathy. Like he's gonna like scam. Basically, it seems like he's gonna scam like a church or something like that, and that just feels like come on, man. Like, is that really your plan? Like, is that in your brain? Are you really that kind of low? But they don't pay taxes, so
that's what makes it
I
good,
get
though.
it.
You can see what drives them. Like, but that's what makes it good, though. You can see what
Yeah,
drives
yeah,
them to do that crap. Like, that's what
I'm
makes
not-
it
I'm
so.
not
Like,
really
because you're
trying
right,
to
I'm
argue that they're,
cringing.
like, yeah, they're great characters. They're lovely to watch, and they're also horrible to watch. But I do want to say here, and this is like sort of more serious, is that David Cho is kind of a yikes. My friend Albert was showing me a video or an article about him in like 2014 or something. He showed up on an interview and like described him basically like sexually assaulting like a masseuse or like a massager person, and then like recounted this story to somebody else. I don't know if it was like a porn star or a podcast host or both or something like that. And then he got kind of called out on it, and then afterwards he kind of just said, "Oh, well, like that story was just like kind of like a story I told for shits and giggles. It's not really actually true." And like I don't know if you can just be
So
like,
he's mental
"Oh,
in real life, is what you're saying.
I guess like either he told the truth in the interview and he really did rape a lady and not realize it. Like he kind of was like, "No, that wasn't it." Or he told a story about raping a lady and thought that was funny. So like there's all kinds like David Cho like
yeah, either way is bad.
Either way,
fucked
just
up.
like, yo, bro,
Yeah.
what are we doing? What is going on?
Yeah, so me and my buddy kind of reached a conclusion like, he probably shouldn't have been cast, and like I don't know. I mean, I don't think he's addressed it since, but yeah, anyways, that's a side note on David Cho that I did want to acknowledge that like that is something that's kind of floating around. I don't know where the end result lies, but it's a very weird / not good kind of look for that show and for casting. Let's move on. This is a show that focuses very much on Asian American characters and lives in an Asian American Southern California world, but isn't necessarily centered around that identity. How does that affect how you enjoy the story? How does that affect, your kind of perception of the show? Me and Brian are both identify as Asian American, so I don't know
Can I
if that
change
sort of
my
plays into it.
identification?
Sure, if you want.
Can it be
Yeah.
post-ethnic?
Yeah, you can be, what's the other name? Rachel
No, you cannot be
Doles-
post-ethnic or
Rachel
racial.
Dolezal.
Dolezal.
I'm gonna be transracial.
Dolezal. I think her name's Rachel
Oh
Dolezal.
yeah, Dolezal. Yeah, no.
Yeah,
you're not allowed.
Dolezal. Ooh. Ultimate finesse move. Legendary.
All right. Well,
She had the glamour.
I don't care who starts us off on this one. This is I don't. I think there's like just a lot to like sort of dig into here, but it is.
This is
what
a
it
very Asian American show.
Yeah.
Like through and through, right? I mean, there's like
But that's not the
like
central
deep-cut
like
references.
It is, but it's like reference, and it's not the central central like point or theme of the show. It's very much.
Yeah,
The
I think
salt.
that's what makes it compelling to me, right? It's not, it's not a show about them being Asian and like, I have this
Exactly.
Asian American experience that all of you other Asian people can relate to, and oh my God, our parents are immigrants and we feel this kind of way. Like, that's not the front and center thing. The front and center thing is that these are,
Beef.
problematic people who got problems with each other, and they're diving further and further into their problems. Beef, exactly. That's what beef is. But from their perspective, suddenly, because they're Asian American, the show doesn't hide from this fact either, is that there is some more nuance to said beef, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the fact that they're doing this to another Asian American person actually makes it, in a way, seem more plausible because, hey, man, like sometimes maybe they wouldn't front like this to another race person. To a person of a different race, right? They might not, they might feel a certain way, but then like suddenly all these emotions are unleashed and pointed at perhaps a mirror in some ways, right? And that says a lot about the characters. And then just this feeling of rage, right? This rage that does not get to be expressed. I think that alone is a very Asian American thing that I personally can identify with. If society tells you that you're supposed to behave in a certain way and you're not allowed to express things, it's going to come out in some really messed up ways. And this is one of them that we see on the show. And so like that, from a racialized or racism experience perspective adds interesting color to the show where you can still enjoy it without acknowledging any of those things, but at the same time you if you are looking at it from that lens, suddenly the story becomes that much more rich. And then you get all of the other dynamics around it, right? Like the Korean American, I mentioned the Korean American brother and cousin thing, like, and the sort of like the pecking order in that and what they do. And then going to the church. But then there's also on Amy's side, right? Like her being married to a Japanese guy, but then like all these class tensions that are involved in that and the class tensions between Amy and Danny. And so like those are all just like things that I recognize from my daily life, which I love seeing on screen. This is the show that I think Asian Americans needed, right? Like, F Crazy Rich Asians, like, we don't need that kind of stuff that perpetuates stereotypes. We don't need to hear all this stuff about, like, oh my God, things going on back in Asia, and then, like, we're struggling between two cultures and blah, blah. Like, that stuff is kind of meaningless to me. To me, this show is more real.
It's about the class battle, which is really about.
Like people with real life and real life issues.
Stuck between two worlds is still relevant, though.
I mean,
for many people,
sort of.
Yeah,
like ish. I mean, like sure, it plays a part, but we are more than that. And I think that's what I love about this show, right? Like there are levels to this thing. There are dimensions, right? Like. Doing just like the stuck between two cultures thing is, to me, is almost at this point a flat cliche or caricaturization of the experience. Like there is so much more, and all of that gets played out on Beef.
Agreed. So because I could put so this is something we talked a little bit about, right? Was I agree. One of the best things I like about the show, and I've talked about this, this is how I feel in general when it comes to representation within media and such, is that I agree, Brian. You don't want to just shoehorn, it's a show with Asian cast or black cast, so it means it or Hispanic cast, and now you have to do these certain basic tropes, right? And especially in the context, I think, of an American story, especially. Lots of people, especially with how many years go by, even people who, that they can trace their ancestry to other countries and all that stuff, or maybe their parents were like third generation immigrants, but at a certain point, a lot of people do identify more with their American identity because that's what they've grown up in. And it doesn't mean that you get rid of the Asian, but it's like, which ones are we going to center in this story? And it worked, and I appreciate that. Like, I'll say, from perspective as a black person, I always feel strongly about, is this a show that has black people and it has to be about black things, or is this a show that's about just a story or whatever, and the cast is just black and that's just what's happening? And then you still represent the culture of whatever organic things that might exist within the black experience. It organically comes up because people still who they are culturally, but that's not what drives the entire plot and story. It's just what brings the characters to life and makes them real. But to your point, what I've enjoyed most about Beef is that I don't really have to have super deep context or knowledge of a lot of, Asian American or Asian culture in general to appreciate, again, what the show is about, which is beef. Like, okay, it's nice to know that maybe Christianity, correct me if I'm wrong, is big amongst the Korean community because, I know Christianity was introduced there and, like, it really got a foothold, right? So, like, okay, that's cool context and that's nice if you're a history buff or, if, and it's nice representation or accuracy if you're someone who's experienced that in your own life. But you could not experience that and it doesn't change how you would enjoy the plot or your ability to appreciate, okay, what does this mean in the larger story, which is your boy Danny's having a mini crisis of faith, at least I thought. But he's also trying to finesse the people for the money in his construction job stuff. Like, that, like that doesn't have to be tied. It doesn't tie at all to his Asian American identity. It's just good character stuff. And them really putting that first makes this show accessible and makes it work. And, I mean, and I don't know. That's what I'm really appreciating. Now, I've never been a fan of trying to tokenize shows in a way where they have to put themselves in a box because of the nature of the cast. And this show is really, really good about that. So I won't say, that shows like movies like Crazy Rich Asians aren't awesome, or, I won't say you don't get that because, there is still fun.
Role to play.
Yeah, there's a role to play. But, and, I actually talked to a coworker at work about this, about how media, we were talking about for black people, how media has changed over the years. And now there's shows for black people of all interests and backgrounds that don't overlap at all. And it means there's diverse content, right? Like, I might watch Atlanta or Insecure. My mom and brother would never watch those shows, but they'll watch Empire or Power. All the shows with black casts and productions and still tell black stories in a lot of ways. Completely different niches and audiences. And that's okay because, to your point earlier, Brian, black people, Asian people aren't a monolith. There's a range of it. Some people lean heavily into their Asian identity and it means a lot to them. For other folks, it really is just like more of a footnote to what's important in their day-to-day life.
Absolutely.
Which is why the class struggle element of this show is so good because, everybody has different beliefs, but for some folks, money becomes more important or class becomes more important than race at a certain point. Like for Danny, his beef for that, and their beef, this is ultimately like a class beef at its core, at least how I see a lot of it. There's a big class element, and that ain't got nothing to do with the Asian stuff either. So it's very well done, and I know they were clearly very intentional about that, and it works.
Yeah, I think.
All right, Wes, other Asian guy. Well, you got to
Sorry. Yeah, Wes.
No, you're good. I think I'm a little bit different take than Brian. I think the Asian Americanness is not necessarily centered. And I would say that, like, it influences what happens, and it feels very much like it's a real part of their identity and their experience and, like, how they grew up. So the idea around, like, a young Korean man who's very familiar with how Korean churches work, like Savon said, in a lot of Korean families, they do, have a big presence in church, and there's many, like, Korean-focused churches in both Southern California and across the country, and that matters, that, like, that is told in this story, or that appears in this story. It makes him feel real, and it's not something you would necessarily get if the writers weren't involved in that Asian American culture in the U.S. I think they did an interesting thing. What you made me think about with George and Amy's relationship is that there's a class thing going on there. I think she talks about she has a Vietnamese background, I think, as a character, and he's a Japanese character, and that matters, right? Because Japanese Americans were one of the first people to come to the U.S., and so they sort of have this more, like, established foothold in the U.S., and there's a more relaxedness and a more Americanness that they're allowed to do things like art, right, as a career.
Yeah.
Like, George gets to do art as his career. And she comes in and she's like, I didn't have that luxury, right? Like, my family has a Vietnamese background, I think, or maybe a Chinese background. And her family, assumably, is more recent immigrants because the Vietnamese people came very much more after the Vietnam War. And most of them did not come with privilege. Most of them came as refugees, right? And so there's all of these layers of, like, yeah, even in that relationship, they're expounding upon this imbalance of power. And that was not something you needed to know, right? But it certainly makes that idea come to life in a more rich way, which is, like, pretty cool and pretty smart. And I hadn't thought of it until you were talking about their relationship. But I think what
I didn't know that,
Savon
Wes,
is
by the
on-
way. Thank you for.
Yeah.
I never pieced that together that way. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And George's mom actually is another great example of what you're talking about, right? Like she's, clearly American through and through, like her whole life or whatever, and is able to have conversations with Amy's character in a way that's very different from, when we're thinking about different generations of Asian people represented on screen. Like you'd expect like talking to some accented grandma or something, kind of like what they had in Shang-Chi.
Yeah.
But this is totally different.
No, she's politically like, I'm on it. I understand how this world works in a way that maybe even, Ali Wong's character doesn't, because she wasn't born into money.
Exactly.
So what I was thinking was I kind of agree with Savon that like the class dynamics and gender dynamics are actually more important
You guys
here
agree.
than the race dynamics. So Ali Wong's character's rage is a lot around her gender. I mean, it is about class for her too, and her previous versions of class, but a lot of it is about gender in that she's being silenced by a whole bunch of people around her, and she's being asked to do all of this work and carry all of this labor that isn't recognized, right? And that's a huge thing for women in America and across the world, that is something that they carry and are expected to do and aren't compensated for. And of course, like, as people are starting to articulate these things and articulate what is happening and what they're feeling, there's a lot more anger, right? And more like pushback against what that feels like and what society has set up as like what's ideal here. And for Danny's character, he's combating a whole bunch of things around class and about money and about not having money, especially as someone whose parents maybe were immigrants or something like that. And he's seeing all the opportunities that he doesn't get, right? Like, and you're feeling that. They don't have to show you any of them. He kind of just talks about how like this job failed and this thing, and like you see him like try and like scrap together the tree company. He's just hustling, right? But he's aware, he's seeing all these nice houses, and he's just like raging at the fact that all these people have money and he can't get access to these opportunities. And like so many people across the United States can relate to that aspect of what it is to be someone in America without access to savings and generational wealth and all of those things that come with it. And so I think those are the things that are driving much of the storytelling so far in the first 3 episodes, more than the layers of Asian American identity. And not that they're not there. I think just the class struggle that Danny is facing and the gender and class struggle sort of, that Amy is facing are really central to what's happening so far. And I think they're pulling that stuff off pretty well. I think there's a few moments maybe where they overplay it, but I do think there's some really good stuff there for them to really explore in the rest of the show. And they're doing some really dumb, stupid shit that's like still funny and comedic, and it's not a documentary of all of these things. They're just letting it play out, and like, they're pulling the top and letting it spin and seeing kind of where it lands.
Well said, gentlemen. I feel like I just got smarter listening to
Yeah, man. Look, we have our moments. Wes is just coming right off helping grow people's brains, so he's still in peak form.
That Saturday school warmed me up. I'm ready.
Yeah, Uncle came in swinging. Yeah, a quick thing I add about the class battle piece too. One of the reasons I think this show is so popular, and I hope it remains popular and that energy continues, is that majority of Americans are living like damn near check to check. So when you think about, and so we've all been, I'm sure most of our listeners just statistically have moments where you're just like, yo, money is hard. It's hard out here. Everything's expensive. It's hard to get. Most people don't have a savings. So it doesn't justify, obviously, again, why people do some of these foolish, ridiculous things. But we have all been really, and most of us have been angry about not having enough money. And I understand.
Or just felt powerless, right? Maybe some people aren't angry, but they felt powerless.
Yeah, I mean, but I think those two go hand in hand. People feel angry because they're powerless and feel like they don't have agency, don't have money, can't provide for themselves. They're trying their best. And so do I approve of all the ridiculous, angry things that, these characters do? No, but I think that's why, for me, when they do these self-sabotaging, to me, at first it was like, oh, man, this is wild. But not in like a ha-ha way. And like for me, it's more of a pitying top to bottom, because they're not inherently evil or malicious people, but bad circumstances can just make you be the worst version of yourself, And Wes, you work in education, so you know you see kids who have good potential, smart, all these good qualities, but because of maybe they just can't, maybe it's circumstance, maybe it's just they had a bad day, but it's people being angry and self-sabotaging themselves. It's easy from a step back to say, oh, I'd never do that, but we've all done it, and it's one of the more, I think, universal human experiences. But I think that's
and
why
you might
the show
do it
works.
in a more socially acceptable way when you have money, right? Or when you've had like a good upbringing, right? Or you haven't had that trauma in your life. You do that stuff in ways that like seems more socially acceptable.
Yeah, or maybe in ways that's just not you beefing, but maybe people drink, maybe it's drugs, maybe it's there's all kinds of coping mechanisms. Just this show just happens to center on, for some, their coping mechanism is rage. Yeah. So it's, I don't know, I'm not that person raging, but this show is more relatable than I would like to admit.
All right.
Also, sex with guns. They cope that way too.
Let's not spoil any of the hijinks that they get up to. I think actually that's one of the most enjoyable parts of the show is like just being like, what's gonna happen next? I know, Brian, you're trying to get out of here. Can you tell us? Would you advise people to watch this show?
Absolutely, 100%. 100% approved on the Brian scale of meats.
This is the Kobe beef.
This is Kobe beef, filet mignon, Kobe beef, served by Kobe Bryant. Maybe that's going too far. That'd be weird. You need some sort of like reanimation spell.
Hey, Star Wars can help you out.
R.I.P. But like, I mean, I think in terms of
Gideon.
Something that you want to sink your teeth into, there's a lot of bad stuff out there, but finally, like, this is the thing that is, to me, one, just like very original, refreshing, but also executed at a high level because the level of acting that we've already talked about on display here. With the excellent writing, rich characters, lots of depth, and the relatability factor, to me, even though the characters are morally depraved and they go down this twisted spiral with each other, are just beyond relatable. In the best way, like I mean, not that you can't relate with them, but that they are so relatable. Like they're so relatable. Because they just feel so real, and all the mental anguish and grief and relationship dynamics that they're going through, just to me feels, ultimately like a mirror to everybody, right? In some shape or form, whether it's as we talked about, from a class perspective, from a gender perspective, from a racialized perspective, or just like, I had a run-in with some stranger and like some shit went down from that perspective too, right? Like part of me is like, how have I not gotten into a year-long beef with somebody on the subway train after they bumped into me or like, stepped on my Pumas? Like how has that not happened yet? But, so I feel like this is a very relatable show in that level. And it is just a joy to watch the hijinks, as you put it.
Just gotta watch the train wreck happen.
Before you leave, put it on wax. What is your prediction for Knicks versus Cavs?
Oh man,
who's gonna win? How many games?
Why you gotta put me in that position?
Let's do it.
I feel like it's going Game 7.
Okay,
it's going Game 7.
And you're picking?
I wanna say the Knicks, but here's the big thing with the Knicks. Maybe this is where we
they
need
don't have
that
Julius
superstar.
Randle.
Like I don't know if we're gonna be able to come through in that fourth quarter, Game 7. All the marbles riding on and ride or die on one player doing the right play. Can Jalen Brunson do it? We'll see. Donovan Mitchell is amazing. He may torture us, but like we'll see. But
right.
I think it's going
Knicks
Game 7.
In 7. You're calling Knicks in 7.
Cavs in 6.
I'm not saying Knicks in 7. I'm saying it's
6.
going to Game 7, and Cavs have firepower.
That is not a call. All right.
It's not going to Game 7.
I don't know if you got to leave and sign off, but if you're staying, you can stay. My next question is, do you have any arch enemies? Because this they quickly develop into arch enemies, like almost at the snap of a finger. Like episode 1, 5 minutes in, these guys have what Brian called a blood feud. Savon, do you have any arch enemies, or have at any time have you had a beef with someone in your life? And if so, what was it?
Oh yeah.
Or are you just an easygoing guy? You get along with everybody.
Both statements are true.
That was my Savon impression.
No, both statements are true. No, who I have beef with pretty easy was my high school principal / headmaster. We did not get along. Extremely intelligent man, one of the most brilliant, just in terms of raw intelligent people I've ever met. I also thought he was really mean and rude unnecessarily, and I was just not
that's
a
no
fan
good.
of him. Yeah,
Right.
and I had him for God. I guess I'm gonna say this on wax since this will go in. Yeah, I said it before. Yeah, he's the one who failed me for religion my senior year of high school. I told you that. Huh? I had to go to summer school for religion my senior year. So when I was done with high school and went and did my whole walking across the stage high school, it's like, all right, cool. I still got to do X amount of weeks of just remedial religion. And this class, I told you, I had like
wait, why did you get it? Why did you
and
fail?
9th graders. Because
you didn't do the work.
No, I did the work, but we were I did the work, but we were beefing, and I let my beef. I was young and didn't learn the lesson of picking your battles, and you should not be beefing with the very strict and sometimes petty headmaster of your school, who is also your honors religion teacher. And
I mean, the same thing can be said as an adult, middle-aged man or old man. He should not be beefing with a 17, 18-year-old in his class.
But he's in a position of authority. I'm not. So all that's cute and dandy, but I guess we had to go to summer school, not him. so who came out on top in this situation? You know? Okay, cool. I could be right. That's the lesson I had to learn. You could be right on paper. That's cute. But like, all right, Savon, you right, but now you in summer school. So like, congrats, you won. Yeah, no, we were pretty beefed out.
You done got your carpets pissed on is what happened. All right. I had this weird rivalry, like I had an arch nemesis online for a while, which is like kind of crazy because I'm pretty easygoing. But the things I don't enjoy is when people are just like, they do dickish things. They like condescend towards other people, and they try to always just like shut other people down by trying to be smart, but not actually making anything like useful arguments or useful like contributions to a working like group. And like this guy, this should tell you a lot about it. So he was an Ayn Rand fan. I think that's how you say her name, like the author.
Ayn Rand, yeah.
Yeah, so he was all about like at that time in his life, I guess. I don't know if he's still this way. It was like all about objectivism, which is a very like selfish libertarianism point of view of, you know, I don't need to like everything should be objective. There's a set of facts and that is all that matters, and we don't need to like they're inarguable basically, right? And I don't need to look out for any other people. I am responsible for myself, and that is it. And so there was a very like condescending way in which he would conduct his online conversations, both through Facebook and I think Zanga at the time was how I kind of heard about him first. And he was like a friend of a friend of a friend or something, and he would sort of like show up in these like circles or meets or whatever. And oh my God, I would complain about him endlessly to one of my friends, our mutual friends, Albert. Like I would just be like, why are we talking to, like, what is he doing?
Why are we keeping this person around?
Yeah. And I would try to like, at the first few times I didn't realize like how much of a troll he was basically. But like a genuine troll, like he really believed these things. And I would try to like, you know, say like, hey, like, I think this is the way that we're talking about this, and these are the concerns that we're having about whether it was a big world topic or a small world topic or something specific. And he would just like come in with like all these like very condescending, like, well, it's obvious that you don't understand blah blah blah, and like, well, from a design perspective, this is the only thing that matters, and you know, like that sort of language of like, I know everything and you guys clearly know nothing. And he would just do this over and over again. And finally, like, I figured out, like, I just need to ignore him. But, like, man, it took a while. It was probably a good 6 months of, like, every few, like, weeks he would show up and do something, like, really aggravating to me. And, you know, I'm, like, 18, 19, 20 years, or I was probably like 21, 22, 23, something like that, years old. And so I wanted to be right, like I'm that guy. Like I'm like, no, like you're wrong. You're just like spewing wrong things. You need to be like corrected in your wrongness. And that didn't work. He was still wrong and proud of his wrongness. And eventually I was like, oh, I just need to block you. Like I can't like have you in my timeline saying like stupid shit all the time. So that was nice. Once I figured out I could just block him and like leave it alone. And every now and then Albert would be like, look what David said. And I'm like, I have no idea. I didn't see that. I don't care. I don't need to respond to that because it's not on my timeline. So
good for you. Good for you, Wes. The key is to not engage. Sometimes you gotta say, you know what?
It took too long though. It took way too long. I was engaging for a long time and feeling very
better late
angry
than
about
never.
it.
Better late than never. I'm glad you didn't let the salt consume you.
It consumed me for a while. I would, spend 45 minutes like doing a post and then waiting for the reply and then posting again in a response. You know how you did that on Facebook? Ooh, it got dragged in. Got dragged in. It was no
got
good.
lost in the sauce.
Ayn Rand,
Sorry
and
to
I've
hear that,
never
but I'm
read
glad
an
you
Ayn Rand. I don't know what her books are really about, and based on my experience with this individual, I will never read one of these books. Like, I am very anti Ayn Rand, like guilty by association.
Yeah, I mean,
for sure.
Their stuff is pretty mediocre.
Pretty wild.
It's a pretty
All right.
good hill to die on.
Beef, whether it's thinly sliced or delivered with salt, it's a show worth checking out. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it. We are out of here.
With that.
We should be back pretty soon with some Mandalorian because they're going to wrap up their third season, which has been a pretty up and down, I think, uneven experience.
That's
but
your word.
We'll be there to break it down for sure. And I'm excited I think the final episode is coming this week. So I'm excited to see where they go with that and what kind of cliffhanger they leave us with this time. Hopefully it's a good one and not a stupid one. And hopefully they don't resolve that cliffhanger in a different show. That would be nice of them. Thanks a lot, guys.
One can hope.
Let's not make that mistake again.
Disney execs,
All right.
You heard it here.
Confidently wrong. We're out. Have a good one. Bye, Savon. Bye, Brian, even though you're not here anymore.
Three, two, one.
My fingers. This is plain. Like rock on, and you just like jab, and that's plane, airplane in sign language.
What?
Hello.
It's like taking two to the eye.
Yeah, I don't know why
wrong.
it's this. I don't know why it's like this. Like it doesn't even look like a plane, but that's a plane.
Wait, Savon, are you hosting? Are you starting us off? What's happening?
Yeah,
here?
I was about to just jump in, but no, actually Wes should do it because Wes is actually a better host. It'd be funny if I did it, but Wes is better at it.
Do it again, man.
He should
do
just
it again.
interrupt. I'd be like,
It's
hello,
you.
and he's like, hello. Do it, Savon. Start us off.
Fine.
Share your gift.